One of the funniest parts about this is that all of that shit happened in America and Donald Trump lost the election. So what you're doing right now is quite literally going back to a shitty narrative that didn't help you win the election. Kind of feels weird to try and do that again. Like you're literally just playing Trump else. I'm just gonna say one thing. Holy dude. I'm not used to the Democratic Party being competent and making right decisions, but that's what it feels like when they actually do. I mean, this is like every single thing that I said would be the best possible scenario, and they followed through on it. Yes, I will go back to the couch clip in a second. Now, one thing I have to mention here is the reason why I say Kamala Harris is like, she's all right in terms of like being an orator is because think about the difference between her and the speech that she delivered versus the way that Tim Walz was delivering his speech. Like the reality of the matter is he's pretty solid. He is naturally charismatic in a kind of goofy, endearing way. I think that he plays really well to the base. It's a great contrast. Kamala Harris is incredibly educated, obviously like represents one pathway in the American dream, coming from a family, being raised by a single mother, immigrant parents, and just like, and you know, becoming the vice president now, running for president. Like that shit is really, really captivating in terms of representation. It's really captivating for a lot of people of color across the board. That is a story that a lot of people share in this country, right? On the other hand, you got Tim Walz also coming from a working class background, literal farmhand shit from Arkansas or Nebraska, okay? Becoming a teacher, serving the military. Like, it's just, he is so authentic. He comes across very authentic, very endearing. I think that, I mean, this is a really, really solid, this is a really solid ticket. Walz's home county in Nebraska is larger than Connecticut, but with only 5,500 people. Phenomenal. I think phenomenal overall. He didn't even stop the thing. He just talks and talks. Let's see what MSNBC has to say, and then we'll tune into the copium factory.
A running mate, vast majority of Americans saying they don't have an opinion of him because they do not know him. She taking the time today in her remarks to introduce him in detail, and then her newly announced running mate.
I will say this much, though, and this part remains true. Like, I don't think Walz ever was like, oh, yeah, I have ambitions. Like, I have higher office ambitions. As a matter of fact, someone was bringing up his one-time quote about how he'd rather eat glass than go back to D.C. And I think that he was basically called into action through his legislative accomplishments. Like Josh Shapiro, on the other hand, very ambitious. Pete Buttigieg, very ambitious. Barack Obama was also very ambitious. Barack Obama, on the other hand, was very charismatic as well and could communicate in a way that at least seemed authentic. I think Tim Walz gives off a totally different vibe, and he was basically built in a lab to dominate American politics. He's got the best biography and the best and got policy chops. A great choice. That's why I was behind him earlier when people were talking about others. They don't have that role player come off the bench mentality, but Barack didn't debate on Fox News. Yeah. I suspect you're joking and making a joke about Pete Buttigieg. Like, it's kind of crazy that people were even thinking about Pete Buttigieg, a dude who was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, when you got a dude who was a governor, who was a congressperson, like committee chairs and shit. It's pretty crazy. Anyway, overall, Republicans are going to be ruthless. They're going to be weird. They're going to talk about how, like, I've seen liberals on Twitter saying they like Walz, but they're concerned by the fact that you also like him. If someone is like negatively polarized towards liking a candidate because I like them, they have the brain capacity of a hamster. Okay. Like that's it. That's the dumbest thing on the planet. If someone is genuinely making political calculations about like what someone they have been negatively primed into hating thinks, it's just like, you should just go outside. You should never touch a computer. Okay. You should just not touch a computer. Also, my political instincts in terms of like putting together a winning composition was so on the goddamn money. Those are the same exact dumbass liberals who were like riding with Biden until the very last moment. Okay. So, you know, in terms of like putting together a successful electoral strategy, I think I'm pretty aware of what the American population is interested in. The crusties I know are already chirping about him meeting with Netanyahu. It's fine. Those people don't vote anyway. It doesn't matter. That's how great Walz is. They have the link to haters for an attack. Yeah, he plugged up a lot of holes that Kamala had that Republicans were going to attack. Well, the other side of this story that like a lot of people, I was actually very worried with a Shapiro pick. I was worried that Kamala Harris would probably tack to the center. It is a age-old Democratic Party instinct to tack to the center when you get attacked by the right. When they call you a radical, instead of doubling down on your proposals and being like, what do you think? You think feeding children is radical? Well, you're the radical. You're the weirdo. You know what I mean? Instead of doing that, Democrats oftentimes turn around and they hit center. They go, no, I'm not a radical. Oh my God, God forbid, don't call me a socialist. Oh my God, I'm so scared. You don't have to be a socialist, okay? As long as you're improving the material conditions of the working class in this country, you don't have to call yourself a socialist. You don't have to say you're a socialist, okay? That's what matters. Stick to the policies, not these like dumbass labels. That's why whenever someone says, Hasan, you're so liberal, you're so libbed up, I'm like, sure, okay, who gives a shit? Or when people say, Hasan, you're a capitalist, you have a house, I'm like, yeah, I am. I love capitalism. Who gives a shit? Listen to what I'm saying. Don't try to package me into a neat little confine that your neat little ideological bubble that you want to cultivate so you can like present me as a straw man that you can easily dismantle. Okay? Overall, there's still work that needs to be done. This is not like a lock. This is not an easy lock. There was a lot of momentum. Kamala Harris just doubled down on that momentum. I give the Democratic Party its roses when they do stuff like this because I think positive influence is a good thing as well. It can't always just be chirping. It can't always be just negative. It can't always be complaints. They're already seeing that in the form of massive donations coming down, right? Like more donations than a top of the hour ad break where people gift subs to ensure that others do not see the 3-minute ad break at the top of the hour, right? Because at the top of the hour, there is a 3-minute ad break. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe for $6 or for free with a Twitch Prime. Twitch Prime is free. I'll watch the couch clip in a second. Okay, calm down. I'm going to get there. I have a lot of thoughts. As I was saying, though, here's the 3-minute ad break now. As I was saying, the Republicans are going to be like, these guys are radical. These guys are radical. So the Democratic Party now has to go, what exactly is radical about feeding children? I think it's radical to offer more tax breaks to the wealthy at a time when they have seen record high profits. I think it's radical to give handouts to massive corporations that rely on the welfare state to keep their employees alive. Okay? I don't think it's radical to feed the hungry. I don't think it's radical to feed children. I don't think it's radical to expand child tax credits so that people with children have an easier time raising their children. Republicans want you to think that these ideas are radical because they've grown far too complacent with their completely incomprehensible and utterly inhumane worldview. Okay? That's it. The average American, regardless of whatever kind of like weird political associations they have, the average American is totally perceptive or totally receptive to progressive economic policies. They recognize it. They're just not used to it, but they recognize that these things help them. Okay? That's why Republicans who vote against infrastructure spending will then go back to their own hometowns and at their town halls act like they brought that money home to build that bridge. Because they're real pieces of shit who recognize that the American population at the end of the day likes to fix the potholes. You know what I mean? So ultimately, the idea that like these people are terrified of radical policies, Americans are terrified of radical policies. No, the fuck they're not. No, they're not. It's just that the Democrats are actually scared. They're so personally invested in this narrative that like Americans actually despise progressive policy that they never want to run on it. They should. And that's why I really like Walz. Because Walz, make no mistake, has a very progressive agenda. A progressive agenda that the Republicans will spend a whole lot of time calling socialist. Okay? And now that Kamala is locked in with him, she has to defend those positions. And to me, that's great. That's why it's hilarious whenever these guys are trying to attack him now. These people who are not completely familiar with his background, they want to attack him. What are they attacking him with? They're associating him with the most consistently popular congressperson in American history. How far left is Kamala's VP Tim Walz? Last week, Bernie Sanders specifically named him as his dream choice. Like literally, that's how completely out of whack these guys are. that they think that invoking the name of Bernie Sanders is going to be a burden. Okay? In that respect, they are no different than the MSNBC commentators. These people do not represent real America. They do not understand what the average American looks at and what the average American wants. Okay? They're completely out of whack. Like, imagine thinking that a guy who has consistently held the highest approval ratings in Congress is a bad person to be associated with. The f*** do you mean? There's MAGA conservatives that will admit that they don't hate Bernie. Yeah, of course. Of course. These guys are so echo chambered up. They're huffing their own farts, and they don't realize that this kind of messaging is what delivered a bunch of L's in the 2022 midterms at a time when Americans were genuinely suffering, okay? In the midst of negative real wage growth, can you imagine a world in which, like, you have a decrepit old president, okay? A decrepit old president who's basically a carcass. And even back then, Americans recognized that by and large, not the media, but Americans did, right? And they still went out and voted for Democrats by large enough numbers that the red wave that was supposed to happen never actually came to fruition. Part of that was because the Republicans were so primed on anti-trans panic narratives, crime narratives, all of which fell apart. And in areas where the Democrats actually capitulated to that right-wing framing, they almost lost. Areas like New York. It's time for the Democrats to actually deliver for their base. It's time for them to actually run to their base, not away from their base. That's why I'm excited about Tim Walz. Sorry. Like, this guy is a perfect representation of the conservative mania. Joey Manorino, okay? Tim Walz dressed up his dog for a pride parade, and he's basically a Somalian. I won't say the rest, but I hope that dog is okay. Like, you look at a dude, like a smiling governor who's objectively popular with his dog, and you go, that's a Somalian, and his dog is gay, and he had sex with his dog. You are mentally ill. I'm sorry for the ableist rhetoric here, but you are so incredibly mentally ill. You need immediate medical attention, okay? You need immediate medical intervention. Like, you've lost your dang mind. He posted this too earlier. This is Tim Walz's family. Mostly peaceful Latina says, looks normal. What's the problem here? Just sharing. We'll let others find problems if there are any. Like, they don't understand. They are so far off the deep end that they genuinely don't recognize how freakish and how off-putting they are, okay? So if they keep to the policies and say, these guys call us radicals for what? Because we want to feed children? All they do is talk about children's genitals on a regular basis. Who do you want? A group of sweaty losers who are constantly advocating for genital inspection day? Or you want people who want to and have successfully fed your children at schools, who want to make it easier for you to raise children in this goddamn country? That's it. That's it. For years and years, part of the reason why I love Bernie as well, for years and years, I've been saying this. Don't be dissuaded by Republican lines of attack that signal that you're like a radical freak or whatever. Explain the policies. They rely too much on the fear-mongering associated with socialism, associated with like certain aspects of democratic policies. Talk about it. The Green New Deal is a great example of this, where people will be like, well, it doesn't poll well. It's like, yeah, motherfuckers, no one talks about it like a jobs program, because that's what it is, okay? It's jobs. It's money. It's money in your pocket. Who the doesn't want a new factory to open up in a goddamn neighborhood? Ain't nobody out here is anti-factory opening up, okay? But Democrats are too weak and too cowardly and too feckless to actually openly communicate their desires for a better America. That's it. That's it. And Tim Walz is a good guy to do this with. He is. So I'm very excited. I'm excited to see what happens. Stop tacking to the center. For all of his failures, there was a guy who didn't do that. He was a genuine center-right figure his entire life. But you know who didn't do that? Joe Biden. They would yell at Joe Biden every goddamn day. He'd get up on that stage and try to the best of his ability, turn around and be like, no, we're going to do rent caps. Like, he didn't give a shit. He literally was like, possibly because he was demented, but he didn't give a f. They put that shit on the teleprompter, and he tried to read that to the best of his ability. You know what I mean? That's what you got to do. Look at these idiots.
Had she had to go through the primary system, she never would have won. This would not be the ticket.
Yeah, well, I think again, this is kind of like a kind of a Maya Angelou approach to politics. Like, make us all feel like we'll light a candle, everyone will feel better, and you'll forget the fact that you're bleeding money every time you go to the grocery store, the gas pump, and that they want to control every move you make with what kind of car you buy, what kind of washing machine you have, what kind of toilet you can buy.
Yeah, definitely. You guys are not the ones who are trying to advocate to control people's lives by interfering in medical decisions, dude.
All right.
Bullshit.
He's a riot. That's the focus of tonight's angle.
God damn it, I can't even watch Fox News up in here. I want to watch Copium, man. I want to watch Copium Brigade.
But last year, as inflation was crushing Minnesota families, this was Tim's priority.
We want every Minnesotan to grow up feeling safe, valued, protected, celebrated, and free to exist as their authentic versions of themselves. Protecting and supporting access to gender-affirming health,
gender ideology extremists,
to being a welcoming and supportive state to the community.
Thing that I like. This is another thing that I really, really like about Walz. Like, this kind of traps the Harris campaign into the position that it's like, why are you advocating against this?
Are mature enough to have their genitals mutilated by a twisted surgeon.
You're a freak.
But
you're a freak. You're a freak. You're a freak. Ain't nobody's doing that. You're a freak.
That banned the barbarism.
Students who are understanding are trying to understand who they are as their gender identity is being developed. They are most at risk. We're there to protect children. We're there to help.
Watch this space. I'm telling you right now. Watch this space here. Go ahead. The more you show how normal a progressive teacher is, the more we Republicans will talk about children's jail to prove how not weird we are. I'm telling you right now, that shit is what they're going to run the table with. If the Democratic Party is not cowardly and they actually actively go, why the fuck would we hurt these teenagers? Like, what the fuck's wrong with you, you freak? These are American citizens, goddammit. They were Minnesotans, and I will protect them every goddamn day of the week, okay? I care about them a lot more than I care about your stupid ass. Every time you say that, those guys are people. They are Minnesotans. They're Americans. They're neighbors. They have the same dreams that you do. And running a campaign on like trying to kill them when they're like a minuscule percentage of the population is insane to me. And the only reason why you're hyper focusing on that shit is because you have no solution to the economic destitute conditions that Americans are subjected to. That's the narrative. Okay. That's what he means when he's talking about how weird they are, okay? That's what I mean when I'm talking about how weird the Republican Party is.
Down to the progressives. This is deeply disturbing, and we're going to dig into this more in a few moments. And remember, if the squad is happy and they are ecstatic that Walz is the choice, you should grab your children and watch your wallet.
It's awesome. They literally are just like, look at all these black women. Look at all these black and brown women. They're stoked about Walz, a white guy.
A socialist just means being a good neighbor.
Don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. Just do the damn work.
If America hoped that Kamala Harris's running mate was going to temper her far-left instincts and maybe even reassure an anxious nation, you might remember how things looked over Memorial Day weekend 2020 in Minneapolis.
I think this is also a very stupid narrative. Oh, if Walz is the governor, this is what's going to happen. Black people are going to riot and they're going to steal your shit. Is also really racist. That's number one. You have to go back to 4 years in the past to point to this. Look at what has happened to Minneapolis under his watch. Again, crime panic. Black people are rioting panic. Immigrant rapists and immigrants or criminals panic. All of this is bullshit, okay? You can just very easily turn around and be like, look at the recovery in this beautiful city, and that's it. That's all you gotta do.
And when I say we, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the state of Minnesota, nationally, and as we've seen over the last 24 hours, internationally. A society that does not put equity and inclusion at the center of it is certainly going to eventually come to the places where we're at.
When they were taking over and then burning parts of the liquor store, destroying a small business, was that part of the DEI, failures of the country? But his failure to lead and call in the National Guard earlier allowed neighborhoods and small businesses to burn.
My husband was asleep, and I went and woke him up. I go, "You need to wake up now." I go, "Town Talk's going to burn down any minute." And we sat there and watched it just melt to the ground, all our hard work.
Yeah, the Ingram angle was on the scene doing that reporting year.
One of the funniest parts about this is that all of that shit happened in America and Donald Trump lost the election. So what you're doing right now is quite literally going back to a shitty narrative that didn't help you win the election. So kind of feels weird to try and do that again. Like you're literally just playing Trump L's, okay? That's what you're doing right now.
It's just sad to see. Here we are 3 years later, and literally nothing has changed. The activists and some of the city council members who are also activists themselves consider it a victory not to have police in the precinct because some of the city council don't want police to begin with.
Don't want police to begin with. But wait a second, we got to be fair tonight. What about Governor Walz's great...
Yeah, I heard her say DEIs did it, as in a substitute for black people because they're racist fucking freaks.
You've lost 40% of your force in the past 4 years. That sounds like a big problem.
It is incredible. It's not just that we lost 40% of the force. They've been facing the highest levels of crime and violence in some categories that the city has ever seen.
Walz has helped tank law enforcement in his state, and he's on his way to tanking education as well. You heard a lot tonight about his experience as a public school teacher, and that sounds lovely. But he's forgotten whatever sense he learned, and now it's all DEI all the time.
We can't find a teacher that looks like the kids they're teaching. You don't need another one that looks like me. You need somebody who's in there. All the research shows that.
All the research.
They keep showing his dubs. They keep showing his dubs.
Naturally,
it's so
with this
awesome.
loopy focus of his, Minnesota's just going in the wrong direction. In its national education ranking, it's dropped now to number 19. But let's look at the bright side. At least the boys can use the girls' bathrooms and get free tampons. Isn't he a riot? And that's the angle. Joining us now, Minnesota State Rep Walter Hudson and John Justice, Twin Cities News, fantastic talk radio host. Representative, what is your warning tonight about the type of leader Tim Walz is? Because we saw the gauzy, warm and fuzzy version tonight. Those of us who were forced to watch that rally in Philadelphia.
Well, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a more radical governor in the union. If he's not number one, he's certainly in the top three. He certainly radically transformed Minnesota into a socialist hellscape in just the 2 short years since he's had the trifecta of Democratic majority in both the Senate and the House here in the state of Minnesota. And you saw it there, looking back to 2020, as we watch Minneapolis burn, what does he do? Does he protect the innocent? Does he reward the productive and the virtuous? No, he lectures us about equity and inclusion and tells us that we ought to just roll over and allow these rioters to express themselves, mostly peacefully. Get ready for a whole lot of that if Tim Walz becomes the vice president of the United States. I think Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are kind of the before and after picture. She has all these ideas of what she would like to see the country look like. He's actually manifested here in the state of Minnesota.
Oh, that's a great way of putting it. The Biden and Harris are just getting going. And John, Minnesota is near and dear to my heart. I think this is the first summer, I don't know in how many, 10, 12 summers that I haven't yet gotten to Minnesota. But I love the state and I love Minneapolis, and I am heartbroken about the state Minneapolis has been left in part because of the radical policies, the anti-law enforcement nonsense.
Yeah, shut the fuck up. Minneapolis, just like everywhere else, while still having a higher than average crime rating in comparison to the rest of the nation, is literally lower. Crime is going down. Just like everywhere else, crime is also going down in Minneapolis. Crime is going down in Minnesota across the board. Okay? Shut the fuck up. They're trying to do the same crime panic narratives, dude. It's not real. Okay? Minnesota is what the number 4 best state in the nation. Number 2 in crime and corrections. Number 6 on the economy. Number 7 on fiscal stability. Number 9 on infrastructure. Number 12 on opportunity. Number 2 on natural environment. Number 16 on healthcare. Number 17 on education. How the is Nebraska number 3 in the best states overall? This list is cooked, dude. Yeah, I don't believe this shit. Utah's number 1. Get the out of here. Idaho, Iowa, Florida. Okay, nah. This list is cooked. Uncuck this list and get back to me. Tim Walz was a woke high school teacher who indoctrinated students so thoroughly in the 90s that they predicted the Rwandan genocide. Oh, I heard about this story. Mr. Walz had already taught for a year in China, and he brought the world into his classroom in the form of African thumb pianos and Tibetan singing bowls. For the global geography class, he devised something far more ambitious than what the curriculum easily could have been: the identification and memorization of capitals, mountain ranges, and major rivers. It was more ambitious, too, than a unit solely on the Holocaust of the sort many states have required. The Holocaust is taught too often purely as a historical event, an anomaly, a moment in time. Mr. Walz said, oh my God, I'm going to lose my mind. Oh my God, he's so sick. Mr. Walz said in a recent interview recalling his approach, students understood what had happened, that it was terrible, and that the people who did this were monsters. The problem is, he continued, that relieves us of responsibility. Obviously, the mastermind was sociopathic, but on the scale for it to happen, there had to be a lot of people in the country who chose to go down that path. Oh my God. Oh my God. Everything I read about this dude, even things that I did not know, is just consistently, he gets better consistently. I'm going to nut again. He's made me nut so many times. Never has a balding 60-year-old man made me nut this much. You have to make the intellectual leap to figure out reasons why. So Mr. Walz took his students, Brandon Bell, the wrestler, Beth Taylor, the cheerleader, Lene Merwin, the quiet girl, always reading some book about Queen Elizabeth, and all the other children of mechanics, secretaries, and town dentists, and assigned them to study the conditions associated with mass murder. What factors, he asked them to determine, had been present when Germans slaughtered Jews, Turks murdered Armenians, the Khmer Rouge ravaged their Cambodian countrymen. For 9 weeks through the winter and early spring school that year, through the howling blizzards and the planting of the first alfalfa on the plains, the class pored over data about economics, natural resources, and ethnic composition. They read about civil war, colonialism, and totalitarian ideology. They worked with reference books and scholarly reports. Long before conducting research took place instantly online. When students finished with the past, Mr. Walz gave them final exam sources. He listed about a dozen current nations, Yugoslavia, Congo, some former Soviet republics among them, and asked the class as a whole to decide which was at greatest risk of sliding into genocide. Their answer was Rwanda. The evidence was the ethnic divide between the Hutus and the Tutsis. Dude, this reads like a movie. Like, this is in the New York Times. This is in the New York Times in 2008. High school project on genocide was a portent of real life events. He educated his children so thoroughly on the material conditions that lead to a genocide and the ethnic tensions that take place that his high school students predicted the Rwandan genocide before it happened. This literally reads like a movie, okay? If you saw this in a movie, you'd be like, really? High school students are running around reading books, doing like college level analysis on what's going on in the world and like predicting a genocide ahead of time? Like, no shot. Their answer was Rwanda. The evidence was the ethnic divide between the Hutus and the Tutsis, the favoritism towards Tutsis shown by the Belgian colonial regime, and the previous outbreaks of tribal violence. Mr. Walz awarded high marks. Like, that is crazy. Little background on Shapiro saying Walz is a good friend. Sources familiar tell me they once attended a Springsteen concert in Jersey together. Look at that. Dude, this is the most English Phil Murphy has ever looked in my... If I had seen a photo where Phil Murphy looked like this, I mean, I would... Like, why does he look so British here? What the f***'s going on? Am I crazy? He looks like he's about to say, like, yeah, it's the boss, innit? I'm Phil Murphy, yeah? Governor of New Jersey. Now, I love listening to the boss, yeah? Boss man. Beto looks hot, as he always does. Who's the second one from the left? Is Beto, Tim Walz, Josh Shapiro, and Governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, innit? All those, we're going to do a race riot today against the Muslims, yeah? You know. That's what he looks like. Is Phil British or do New Jersey and sound like that? No, he doesn't sound like that. And he normally doesn't really look like that. It's just that right now, he just happens to look like that. Anyway,
Hi, Minnesota.
One can't get enough of Tim Walz being a total dad content. Governor Tim Walz and his daughter Hope recorded a PSA video for the new hands-free law to prevent distracted driving.
Governor Walz here, along with
Hope.
We're making sure we remind all of you hands-free driving starts on the 1st of August. We want to make sure our teen drivers are not texting and...
No. I think it's actually mostly bald men.
Cut. All right, once again, Minnesotans, we're here making sure millennials are putting down the phone. And
I think it's actually adults, Dad. Like older people like you.
Cut.
Hey guys, this is Hope Walz and I'm here with my dad, Governor Walz, and we're just here talking about the new hands-free law, and I'm just gonna show him how to prop his phone up so it's not in his hand and he can still see his navigation. All right, just like this.
Cut. Hey, Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz here. What in the... Governor Walz here trying to get rid of a child for anyone. On the 1st of August, Minnesota's new law is hands-free, making sure teens aren't Snapchatting.
I think it's everything, like texting, calling, like it's all hands-free, not just Snapchat, Dad.
All right, cut. One more time. Turn it down.
Why?
We're making a distracted driving video and you have the radio up too loud.
Do I think Hope is a Hasanabi head? I mean, she is a vegetarian. Maybe.
Hey, Minnesota, Governor Walz here along with Hope, who listens to the radio too loudly. Well, it's a distracted driving video we're trying to make. Okay.
You think Tim Walz is normal? He would never tell his kids to shut the fuck up about Pokemon. That's right. That's right. That means he's, of course, abnormal, whereas JD Vance is normal. Yeah, this was funny. The corn dog. I'm vegetarian. Turkey then. Turkey's meat, not in Minnesota. Turkey's special. Anyway, it's just like, oh, a breath of fresh air in some ways. It's very shocking to see.
They have imported 15 million people, and their goal is to somehow get federally legislation passed eventually that gives amnesty to, say, 2 million, 3 million, 15 million of them. And guess what? Elections are determined in this country by margins of tens of thousands.
Yeah. You guys are real freaks. Let's see what he had to say in 2006 from his radio ad.
Hi, my name is Tim Walz, and I'm running for Congress here in southern Minnesota for several important reasons. But today I'd like to tell you about one issue that's very personal to me. I am a retired command sergeant major in the Minnesota National Guard, and after years of firing artillery, I sustained severe inner ear damage. Because I have...
By the way, before people joke about this is a major issue. Like, you don't even need to go to combat. This is one of the many ways. This is one of the many ways in which, like, the American military fucks you up. I mean, if you're a vet or if you have veteran family members, you already know this.
I have good health insurance provided through my employer. I was able to have surgery on my ear. As my ear healed, my hearing was gradually restored. One morning, several weeks after the surgery, I awoke to a sound I couldn't identify. I asked my wife what I was hearing, and she told me, "Tim, that's your 4-year-old daughter, Hope." You see, Hope wakes up singing every morning, but I had never heard that sound until that day.
Jesus
I'm running
Christ.
for Congress because I believe we as a country have a moral obligation to ensure that every father can hear his daughter sing, that every citizen receives the best care our medical community has to offer. I'm Tim Walz, and I approve this message because I've heard how important healthcare is to everyone.
Oh my God. Dude, what the fuck? That shit's crazy. All right, let's hear from Bernard.
Agree that the vice president and the governor can stay focused on economic issues that benefit working people, demand that the billionaire class start paying their fair share of taxes. You know what? I think they're going to not only win, I think they have a chance to win pretty big.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I actually got a laugh out of you 2 weeks ago when I asked you about Trump's claim that Harris is more liberal than you are, and now Walz is being hit for his record that you just laid out there, a progressive one, as the governor of Minnesota. Senator Lindsey Graham tweeted earlier, Harris is feeling the burn and picks Walz. Thank you, Kamala. Governor Tim Walz is a dream for the radical left. And I wonder if his record as governor is going to be this attack line from
Bernie got
Trump.
Bernie got these new glasses on. He looks like a fuckboy. I don't know if I like
well,
it.
I don't want to give Trump's people any advice, but I would suggest if they want to do that, they should read some of the polling. If Governor Walz believes, for example, that we should cut the price of prescription drugs in this country in half to what they are around the rest of the world, over 70% of the American people believe that. You want to attack them for being radical? I'll help pay for the ad. Walz believes we should cut prescription drugs in half. Vote for Trump. I don't think so. The American people overwhelmingly believe, as the governor does, that we should raise the minimum wage to a living wage. If the Republicans want to attack Walz and Kamala Harris for wanting to raise the minimum wage, I'll help contribute to those advertisements.
Okay,
so I think this whole narrative that if you stand up for working class families, it's somehow a negative is totally absurd. It's only believed by the corporate media and the political establishment. Working people know that the time is long overdue to have a government that represented them rather than just wealthy campaign contributors.
We'll make sure the Trump campaign sees that message. Senator Sanders, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And out front next, we're going to speak to Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar, who has worked very closely with her home state's governor. How does she think he can help the attacks that he's too extreme? Plus, we're going to hear from a former...
What's Walz's takes on immigration on the border? Is he going to be able to contest any of Harris's takes? His old takes on immigration, I believe, were literally like under the Trump administration, we're super pro-immigrant. Now that we're living in the Biden world and we are experiencing the Democratic Party trying to make sense of like Biden's worst political instincts on immigration, tacking to the right because he's always had that conservative dog in him. He's defended the border bill proposal, which is really bad. They should never talk about that. Oh my God, please. The only time you talk about immigration should literally be to point out how insanely ruthless the Trump administration is on immigration. I'm begging the Democratic Party to never either only bring up the minutia and the details in which how Donald Trump's agenda for immigration would look like. It would look like concentration camps, okay? It would look Hitlerian, or talk about immigrants as contributors to the American economy with actual honesty, okay? Don't lean into the right-wing framing, acting like immigrants are actually a matter of immigrants must be dealt with from a national security agenda, a national security compromise, that they're not. There's no data to suggest this. There's only data to show the exact opposite. Walz's father, a school administrator, died of lung cancer when Walz was 19. Walz said this moment fueled his views on healthcare access. The last week of my dad's life cost my mom a decade of going back to work to pay off hospital debt. I mean, his so that's definitely a thing. The immigration part of the agenda is like a massive weakness. And the other massive weakness is Gaza. It is so strange. This is not an issue on the back burner, especially when we're in the midst of like Lebanese and potentially Iranian retaliation on Israel. It's not going to go away, especially as Israel continues to do Israel shit as a direct consequence of Biden's administration's outward failure on mismanaging this conflict, on allowing Israel no restraints, on allowing Israel to just like lean into whatever the they want to do in the most violent ways possible. In terms of Israel, neither of them, neither Kamala nor Walz, have said anything that's like outside of the norm or even remotely pro-Palestinian. They don't personally need to do, like, this is not a terrifying prospect, okay? It's not a terrifying prospect in the way that Democrats are conditioned into thinking like anything outside of like unconditional, unlimited support to Israel is actually going to be seen as like anti-Semitism or whatever. That's not going to happen.
Questions and interacting with people like a normal politician. You have J.D. Vance, who also has really terrific ideas, but is very, very good. As you pointed out, we saw in Philadelphia today, is marvelous at answering questions and interacting with people and defending the policies that he wants to provide and get elected for to help the country.
Yeah, by the way, as that chatter is also pointing out, remember when I used to yell about Biden talking about how he expanded NATO and how that's not going to win a single voter? You don't really hear about how Biden expanded NATO any longer, do you? When people are campaigning, It's just so strange. I guess liberals were wrong on that front as well, because they're just as extremely online as like the rabid right wingers are. How come we're not talking about how Biden brought Finland and Sweden into NATO? I thought that would play so well to the Pennsylvania voters. Like, who the cares about AUKUS, dude? The are you talking about? People are suffering financially, okay? Ain't nobody's got time for this NATO bullshit. Do you think that's the majority of mainstream Dems, the reticence to be called anti-Semitic? No. I suspect, and maybe I'm wrong on this, this is wee-woo speculation alert. One of the only immediate positive things that Joseph Robinette Brandon did in his time in office was the Afghan withdrawal. That also was the first time that mainstream media turned on him dramatically. Okay? Before then, it was all roses. Everyone was talking about how great Biden is. That was the turning point in his administration where the media started pounding him. Okay? They pounded him quite a bit. Now, notice how the Afghan withdrawal is not really a point of contention. Have you met even a Republican that would put that at the top of the reasons as to why they're not voting for Biden or the Democrats? No, of course not. Fox News tries to do it, but nobody gives a shit, because Americans ultimately understand that it was a good thing that we don't have fucking military in Afghanistan any longer. Okay? Let me rephrase that. Normal Republicans, okay? You might have like insane family members who still bring that up, but that's not their top consideration. If it was, it'd be reflected in the polls. But the problem is the Democratic Party saw how much anger and resentment mainstream media built against them when they did the right thing in Afghanistan, which was to withdraw after a 20-year occupation that went nowhere. And I think they fear that if they were to come out against Israel, that the media would bring the hammer down, because it requires actual political courage to be able to go against what is designed as like the permanent American policy position, foreign policy position that gets bipartisan marks, right? I think they're terrified of that. I say, take the leap. You were terrified of replacing Joe Biden with Kamala Harris. Look how wonderful that worked. Americans, by and large, are relatively peace-loving people, okay? And when they're not, they're actually completely oblivious to the management of American imperialism. It is by design. But ultimately, Americans, by and large, are not horny to constantly go to war. Here is a poll. Look at this poll. Most Americans oppose sending U.S. troops to defend Israel, poll finds. Look at this poll. Suck my dick, dude. We are selfish people. But in this instance, our selfish desires actually play a positive role. Okay? Americans, by and large, respond positively to pro-peace campaign rhetoric. Donald Trump literally does this on a daily basis. He's a liar, and he's lying when he says he's pro-peace, but it doesn't change the reality that he's still saying he's pro-peace. The Democrat counter to that cannot be, we're the pro-war party. We're going to save NATO. We're going to fix NATO. We're going to save Israel. You can't do that, man. It makes no dang sense. It's so dumb. How is not wanting to send people to a slaughter fest for no reason selfish? Americans are selfish because in order for American existence to continue as it is, in order for you to get cheap commodities, things of that nature, there's a lot of bloodshed that happens that Americans don't pay attention to. That's what I'm saying. That's why they're selfish. Do you understand? You feel me? You smell me? His angle is that countries don't want to with him, but you're not wrong. No, dude. He also says, I started 0 new wars under my watch. Have you never talked to a Trump supporter, chatters? I do on a daily basis almost. All right. I do here. I do online. I do offline. I watch Trump supporters on a daily basis. They constantly say, I started no new wars. Look at Biden. All wars. Ukraine. Biden did Ukraine. Now, obviously, it's not entirely Biden. You are a Trump supporter. Yes, I am a Trump supporter. You got me. Like, some of you are so stupid. And the only thing that, like, you think is your saving grace is that you're not like a Republican. That's it. Okay? You look down upon Republicans, but you're just as stupid. Like, straight up. What are we doing here, man? Some of you, not all of you. I'm just saying, like, a lot of liberals see themselves as significantly more intelligent than the average Republican, but then they just have like the same cultish mentality. It makes no dang sense. Anyway, let's continue. Yeah, are the debate lords still saying that Biden should stay in and that Israel isn't doing war crimes? Probably. I don't know. I don't watch that shit. Oh, yes, Walz did make a couch joke, which I'm going to get to in a second. Yeah, rub it in. Can't get over the fact that literally less than 3 weeks ago, the Democrats' plan was to have a man who can't talk or stay awake be the nominee. It was such a fun time when Joe Biden would be like, my running mate, Vladimir Putin, loves to ban abortion. And then everyone would be like, I don't think this is going to work, guys. And then 1,000 people would yell at you on here that you were an idiot who loved Trump, lol. Yeah. Remember that? It's so weird. It's so strange.
Minnesotans.
Here's my goat. Former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura endorsed Tim Walz recently.
Governor Jesse Ventura here. As an independent statesman, I don't believe in the major political parties. Since leaving office, I've rarely endorsed a candidate for office in Minnesota of any political persuasion.
That's that dude right there.
But this election is too important. That's why I'm endorsing Governor Tim Walz for re-election.
That's my goat right there, dude. Jesse the Body Ventura.
Tim has shown through the
23-point swing for Kamala among independents. What the Harris is now winning independents, something Biden was not doing. Harris is up 9 points with independents. She was down 14 points with them last month. How are Kamala and Walz looking as a duo? Ecstatic. It's electric, okay? It's a great composition. It's phenomenal. It's great. My hope is that Walz's constituents and the DNC pressure campaign that will inevitably happen will cause the Democrats to finally tackle the Israel issue on partisan grounds, okay? That's maybe it's too much hopium. Maybe it's too much hopium, and it probably is. But I do think personally that this is what needs to happen going forward. Israel keeps bringing us into shit that they cause over and over again. Now you got 4,000 Marines swimming around in waters that they shouldn't be swimming around in. Ain't nobody wants that, okay? That's crazy. As I showed you, the majority of Americans oppose sending U.S. troops to defend Israel, poll finds. But that's precisely what's happening currently, okay? Especially when the Democratic Party, currently in power, has a wonderful opportunity to put an end to this all and look like heroes at the end of the day. It's one phone call, chat. You don't understand. When I say it's one phone call, like, I cannot stress this enough. It literally is one phone call. Say it with me. No more weapons until ceasefire. 5 words, okay? That's it. It stops tomorrow. That's it. Pick up the phone and say, you do not get a single additional weapons transfer until you get to the table. This time with Yahya Sinwar, who apparently is now going to be leading Hamas because Israel killed the principal negotiator in charge of the hostage release agreement. Netanyahu loves that prospect. Doesn't matter who is at the chart, who is leading that Hamas ticket. Okay? One phone call. That's it. One phone call. Anyway.
Sixing everything Walz has done.
Yeah, good to be with you, Jesse. I mean, I think it's a cynical pick on the one hand. I think that all those superficial characteristics that you were just describing are the things that probably appeal to Kamala Harris. I mean, she's really, like people have said, she's not really running on an agenda. It's all about image. The problem is that when you dig into these big controversies, the unwillingness to call it the National Guard for 3 days after Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, like this kind of shit is just, it's not going to work. Save me from the alt-right pipeline. I actually hated you for your old One Piece takes. Like my old ones before I started watching One Piece and fell in love with it. Is that what you mean? Harris was struck by Walz offering he didn't want to run for president. Advisor Cedric Richmond on how it was received. Look, I'm not concerned by my image or my approval rating. I'm going to stay in this moment. Be your VP, run through walls, and fight. Dude, god damn. the blue walls, how a low-key Midwestern governor shot to the top to be Harris' VP pick. Exactly what I said. This motherfucker was not.
Vice President Harris has made it.
This motherfucker was not trying to be president or VP at all, okay? He was just doing his damn thing. Anyway, he doesn't use a teleprompter. The Minnesota governor said he doesn't even have one, in fact. So if he was the pick, Walz said Harris' team would have to get him a teleprompter and teach him how to use it. My goat. I was an absolute Israel dick rider, but after watching documentaries about the West Bank and Gaza, I changed my mind. You kind of helped me with that? Hell yeah. That's what I'm here for. Virtually, listen. You guys need to understand something. You're not going to agree with every single thing that I say, okay? I'm a former Crowder watcher that's been converted by you and mostly Ethan. You're not going to agree with everything I say, okay? There's going to be plenty you don't agree with, but just be open-minded, okay? That's it. That's all I ask. If you have the capacity to be charitable and be open-minded, you might recognize that a lot of your positions that you held on to prior, maybe you held on to due to fear. Minnesota Jewish leaders highlight VP pick Tim Walz's commitment to community in Israel. I mean, this is a Jerusalem Post article. I'm sorry. This is wish casting in the opposite direction. I voted for Trump in 2020, was banned from your channel for saying you were dick riding Democrats, and now 4 years later, you have changed my opinion on so many matters. I feel so much better about who I am today. Hell yeah. It's called growth, man. I'm happy for you. I'm proud of you. Anyway, I was so uneducated on Israel before October 7, and you really helped me better assess what's going on so much that I have started reading Rashid Khalidi. Yeah. I won't fault you for former opinions that you had, previous positions that you held. The goal is to change people's minds. Okay? On the other side of the pipeline, I've always been a leftist, and a lot of clips made you out to be further right than you actually were. I thought you were some annoying rich centrist, but through Ethan is Online, I realized your positions are literally so close to mine and came here to get more political education, especially after October 7. You kept me informed and helped me understand the world better. Yeah, I have haters on every side of the American political spectrum. I got annoying anarchists, okay, MAGA communists, people who present themselves as like radical vanguardists that despise me as well. I got liberals who hate me, claim that I'm right-wing. I got right-wingers who hate me, claim that I'm liberal. I think ultimately, you know, I haven't changed course, changed trajectory. My positions are firmly grounded within reason and also within just empirical evidence. You should go and meet him here at the Minnesota State Fair, August 22nd. I'm going to meet him at the DNC, I hope. I'm trying. I would love to link up with him and Sean Fain, squad members. You haven't had red-pilled fake edits forever, though. I came here as a conservative who just was born in the Midwest, unexposed to shit. Since I was shown Ben Shapiro, then I watched you and agree way more with how you explain things and debunk lies. Hell yeah, the veil. Doesn't the hate ever get too much? No. The hate sucks. There's nothing you could do about it, though. It's a constant. I'm used to it. I've been getting it from when I was a much smaller content creator at the Young Turks, okay? For me, it doesn't matter because ultimately, for all of the hate that I receive from outside groups that are just like working every angle they possibly can to disparage me, I still have an amazing community, a community that can be unimaginably impactful in moments that matter, okay? That's why I keep doing this shit. I love this shit. That's it. I relied on this community throughout COVID. You know, this was my support system. That's why I have a reverse parasocial relationship with my own community as well. And I still, you know, I believe in the work. I believe in what we do here. I believe in changing people's minds. I think I have a fairly tolerant approach to politics, although I do have my heated moments. But you guys are the reason why I do what I do every day. Yep, here you go. Your positions have not changed. Yeah, talking to Jewish Current's senior editor, Noah Cohen, about Israel's controversial nation-state bill. This is from a Facebook stream that I did all the way back in 2018. Holy shit, 2018, dude. 6 whole years ago, baby. Yeah, this would not have happened if not for Uncommitted. In his defense, Shapiro's backers pointed to his public condemnation of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and concerns about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But some Democratic lawmakers and donors privately expressed concerns to people around Harris that Shapiro's position on Israel and the pro-Palestinian movement risked alienating voters who had sworn off Biden but were willing to give Harris a fresh look. Walz on being in the pocket of organized labor. Oh, this is another one. Someone said once, Walz is in the pocket of organized labor, and I said, that's a damn lie. I am the pocket.
I remember, some of you remember this, I had an opponent who thought this was a real zinger when we were going at it. He said, Governor Walz is in the pocket of organized labor. And I said, that is a damn lie. I am the pocket. Look, seeing folks here, and I heard Senator Klobuchar make note of this. It was 40 years ago this week that Vice President Walter Mondale broke that glass ceiling and picked your...
By the way, Austin Show just texted me and he said, I used to think that capitulating to the center was a good idea and the right move. I understand now why Dems have been losers for so long. Bro, this is big stuff, okay? You got centrist libs turning around and being like, hey, maybe we should lean into good policies, sound policies that actually help people. You know what I'm saying? Maybe that's the method. Good. Do it. Forgive me if you've already talked about this, but I think it's worth mentioning. What is this? Tim Walz's model of masculinity, one of wholesome... What is this? This person blocked me. One of wholesome, benevolent cheerfulness, offers a really stark contrast of the boorish domination of Trump and spine-chilling creepiness of Vance. They also aren't masculine. Donald Trump is zesty as okay? They don't even fit the stereotype of like what masculinity is supposed to be. Their own stereotypes. Because in American politics and in America in general, in the Western world in general, people basically say masculinity is just confidence. Okay, that's what it is. That's what they can characterize it as, no matter whatever the they want to characterize it as. But ultimately, they're talking about confidence. Okay, that's literally what it is. This doesn't mean that that's a masculine trait automatically. Like you can be feminine and be confident, obviously. But that is what they're talking about when they talk about being alpha. And the reality of the matter is, like a guy like JD Vance is oozing with insecurity. A guy like Donald Trump is oozing with insecurity. He might be narcissistic enough to like shield that side of himself, but you can see it when he talks about age-old grievances that he holds on to, that he carries everywhere with himself. Like Graydon Carter, that sissy Graydon Carter that didn't invite him to one Vanity Fair party. You know, these guys simply say that they are. And something that you always have to remember is if you have to say it, you ain't it, okay? If you have to constantly say it, then you're not it. That's why it's so funny when these motherfuckers are like, yo, this guy, Hasan, you are so soy. Unlike my favorite commentator, Ben Shapiro. It's like, come on, dude. Sure. Okay. To an Israeli who genuinely doesn't know, how would you sum up Walz's position on Israel more generally and with respect to this war specifically? I think he's pro-Israel in the same exact way that the average Democrat has been historically, but he has interesting blips in his foreign policy. In the House, Walz played a significant... This is from... Ida now works at Just Foreign Policy. I did not know that. She's a comms director and policy advisor for Just Foreign Policy. She is a journalist at The Nation, used to write for The Intercept as well. Ida is a wonderful person. Love her. Here's a thread on Tim Walz's foreign policy record. In the House, Walz played a significant role in the pushing back against the new war in Syria during both the major pushes for U.S. involvement in 2013 and 2016. He was also a strong voice in defending Congress's war powers. Walz helped lead a larger group of House Democrats to urge Obama to not go to war in Syria, which was critical to undermining pressure that was building on Obama to wage a war he didn't want to fight. The Walz-Conyers molten letter calling on the Obama admin to continue pursuing a diplomatic solution was right after the 50 State Department officials came out urging for war. To get a sense of just how pro-war the narrative had become, check out the hit piece that Political's Nahal Tusi did on the latter. House Dems back Obama on Syria despite bloodshed. Walz pushing back against the new war in Syria in 2013. We have to challenge the administration, he said. If we're being true to who we are, it is about the constitutional responsibility of the House. It should not matter who is the occupant of the White House. After 12 years of war, the American public has every right to weigh in and expect their views be represented in Congress, Walz said. Walz co-sponsored all of the Yemen war powers resolutions and even co-sponsors bills opposing the U.S.-backed coup in Honduras. On Cuba, Walz opposed aspects of Trump's policy, calling it short-sighted and misguided. He focused on opening markets for agricultural trade to benefit both Minnesota farmers and the Cuban people. Yeah, he was a supporter of legislation to allow our systems of credit to create markets for our farmers in Cuba so we can export. Walz on war powers. On the 16th anniversary of the 2001 AUMF passage, we're reminded it's Congress' duty to hashtag vote on war. Hashtag endless war is not sustainable. Time to debate and vote. Walz also was an advocate for the Iran deal in 2015. Okay? Former Secretary of State Colin Powell, Iran agreement, a good deal with very vigorous verification. None of our options are gone. Foreign policy is much better than most U.S. governors. Yeah, I mean, this wasn't when he was a governor, chatter. He also was in Congress as well. Is pushing the Dems hate Jews narrative a legitimate line of attack for the Republicans to take a win a significant amount of orders? Why are they pushing so hard? They're flailing. That's why he went on Aiden Ross's stream. The Republican Party is flailing. They are looking for new avenues because anyone that was tuned into the television during the 4 years of the Trump presidency has already made up their minds on Donald Trump, whether they are definitely ride or die and lock the fuck in for Donald Trump, or they will never vote for Donald Trump ever. Okay? So for that reason, they're looking at new angles. They're looking at new avenues, new demographics that they previously had not been able to capture. One of those demographics are people who were too young to like make a real assessment of the Trump administration and remember how they felt under the Trump administration. That's young voters. Now, is this actually a successful method for the Republican Party? I don't think so. Even with how much right-wing manosphere-style content has dominated the brains and the Andrew Tate-style orbiters and Andrew Tate himself has dominated the brains of young boys in this country, I still don't think Gen Z is like as invested in the Republican Party as the Republican Party thinks it might be. Okay? So that's one. The other one is the black vote. Okay? Specifically, the black male vote. The Trump campaign has made significant leeway with every male voter in every demographic. It's not just like black men, even though the black men vote is significantly smaller margins than every other non-college educated voter base. But across the board, the Trump administration plays really well to non-college educated men in this country. Okay? Across the board. With white men, it's a massive disparity. With Latino men, it's a pretty sizable disparity. And with black men, it is actually historically much higher than ever before. This has caused the Trump administration, in my opinion, to falsely think that they can make leeway and put a dent in the black vote in general. It's not going to happen. It's a stronghold for the Democratic Party, partially because the Republican Party has a very hard time not doing white supremacist rhetoric in a way that black people immediately recognize. Okay? Why you follow and think tank actors? Perhaps because I know them personally, and I've known them since before they were working at think tanks, including not Leeway, Headway. Sorry, you're right. And also, yeah, I know them in the real world, and they're great journalists. So, anytime Donald Trump says some weird shit about black people, anytime he defends police, anytime he says something like Kamala Harris is not a real black woman, or that maybe the police were doing all right with the Sonia Massey murder, which was gruesome and horrific, of course. Anytime any Republican anywhere around the country says something like Kamala Harris is a DEI candidate, every black and brown person immediately perks up. Okay, they hear that because they've heard that their whole lives. Affirmative action pick, CRT, woke, DEI, the N-word, all of that. Okay, it's just another reminder of the exact same shit that right-wingers have said about them. Okay, they know what it means. So you can't do that while also simultaneously try to win over people of color to your side. Okay, Trump says she's Indian. Come on. Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Trump is like, she's not black, she's Indian. She's both. Like, that's ridiculous. Trump literally will look at a black woman dead ass and say, you turned black. Okay? It's ridiculous. Important to note that a lot of the DEI shit is rooted in insecurity. A guy doesn't get the job or scholarship, immediately has to find an external reason to defend their ego. Yeah, I know. So yeah, I think ultimately these are all really silly attack points